So, excuse me, I really hate vegetables, and I really, really hate beets. When I grew up, my mother forced me to eat beets when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and since then I think I've been clinically traumatized about beets. But the good news is it's the topic of this story slam. And
it's beasts, not just beasts.
What?
Beasts.
Oh, it's beasts. Oh. Okay, that's different. All right, so 10 years ago, I was in Brussels on a business trip, and if you probably know, Brussels is a little bit northwest of Transylvania, and I was out one night looking for a place to go drinking and just kind of see the city, and walked into this bar, bistro, called Halloween. And Halloween was owned by this guy who's a collector of unusual things. We walked in it, he had sculpture pieces, amazing paintings. The whole theme was kind of gothic and dark and a little spooky.
We were there.
It was cool. We're there.
It was awesome.
All right, so you know where I'm going with this. So in the middle of the floor is this glass case. It was about this wide, this tall. Total glass case, surrounded by candles. And inside the glass case, no lie, was a perfectly preserved vampire. Seriously. I found out that the vampire actually came from the basement of this place. It was a 16th century building. It's there. They unearthed, broke through a wall, and in the wall was this vampire. And what preserved it was a number of things. It was airtight. It was dry as a bone in there. There was lichens, which is a kind of fungus that floated around and landed on the skin and preserved this thing perfectly. And lastly, there were 3 bags and burlap bags of salt. These things kept it pristine. So here it was. I went over to this thing and took a look at it. And it was totally nude. It was squatting. It was like in the glass case, kind of like this. And its arms crossed. There were shackles. His head was bald, but there were little hairs coming out of the head. And its fingernails, toenails had grown long. They were curled, a little bit pointed, kind of freaky. And I was mesmerized by this thing. Part of it was like a baby. Part of it was like an ancient man. And it was weird. It had, no lie, 2 kind of rotten fangs coming out of its dried lip. And the skin was like luminescent papyrus, kind of. It was amazing, and it was still supple looking. So I'm on my knees looking at this thing, getting a close look. You could see the cells of its skin. You could see fingerprints, and I went like, and then this happened. The eyes, which were closed and sutured shut with black coarse thread, honestly, as I was looking, rolled underneath the lids and looked over at me. And 2 little pieces of condensation appeared on the glass where its nose was. So this thing breathed. And I was freaked out. But it was so cool. So I went and found the owner and asked if it was for sale. And he said, no, seriously. And he said, it's not for sale. And I said, I wrote down a number and I said, US dollars, cash. And he said, Monsieur, it is for sale. And I called my wife, my ex-wife. That's a whole other beast story. But I called her up and told her that I was going to bring this thing back. And I will never forget this. She said, Christian, you are fucking out of your mind. There's no way that this blood-sucking beast is going to come to our house, home with you. Forget about it. And I said, Amy, this thing is so cool. It's a real vampire. And I gotta have it. I was gobsmacked by this thing. And then I thought about my 5-year-old daughter. And I thought, oh my God, if in my living room, in a glass case, Daddy brings home a vampire, Taylor will be traumatized for the rest of her born life. Kind of like I was traumatized by Beats, only probably worse.
Christian, stick around, stick around. No, I mean, Kristen, you were really creeping me out with that story. I gotta be honest.